When I first heard about the Ivalice Chronicles, my first thought was, oh, again? Whoa, okay, put the pitchforks down. Listen, I love Final Fantasy Tactics as much as the next SRPG fan. In fact, I consider it one of the finest games ever made. I played it multiple times on the PlayStation 1, and then again with the War of the Lions version on PSP, and then again on iOS. That's right, I played FF Tactics on a friggin' iPad. So what the heck is my problem? Well, FF Tactics continues to get ported and re-released and remastered over and over again, while games like FF Tactics Advance, FF Tactics A2 Grimoire of the Rift, and Tactics Ogre the Knight of Lodis are left to rot on their original platforms. And that's pretty sad. These are great games that I think every SRPG fan should check out. I don't think they reach the same lofty heights that FF Tactics does, but few games ever have. Well, at least as far as I can remember. We'll see, I guess. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I hope to make more videos on more neglected tactics games, so please like this video and subscribe to the channel so that I can keep doing this. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance was released in Japan for the Game Boy Advance on Valentine's Day in 2003, which was 22 years ago. Oh no, am I old? The team that developed the game bounced around between Quest Corporation and then Square, making some of the most influential and beloved tactics games ever along the way. So shout out to them for making some of my favorite games of all time, including this game that we're finally gonna be playing. I'm writing these thoughts as I play the game, so you will essentially be coming with me as I play and finish Tactics Advance. I have played through this game a few times before, but my memory is kinda bad, and so I don't really remember too much about it. So this should be a pretty fresh experience for me. One last thing, I didn't want to be recording every single second of my gameplay, so most of the in-game footage here is from World of Longplays, captured by Iron Sharp. Big thanks to them for the footage, and links will be in the description. Despite being a Final Fantasy game, Tactics Advance begins in a modern-day schoolyard with a snowball fight. This serves as an introduction to a few members of our main cast of characters, as well as a basic tutorial for the game's combat. You actually get to name the main character whatever you want, which is not something I remember from the times I played this game in the past. If I could go on a little tangent here, I'm not a huge fan of naming main characters. In a game like this one with no voice acting, it's not a huge deal, but in something like a modern Fire Emblem, it can be hit or miss. In Three Houses, it was a hit. It just felt right for everyone to call you Professor in that game.
Greetings, Professor! Nothing to report.
But in the next game in the series, Engage, it got kind of annoying hearing everyone refer to you as the Divine Dragon.
Divine Dragon!
A divine dragon!
Divine Dragon.
Divine dragons.
Divine One.
Divine dragon? Divine one.
Divine One.
Divine one.
Just me? Okay, rant over. There is a default name for the main character in Tactics Advance, and I did a quick search to make sure my pronunciation of it is correct. I found this Reddit thread, and most folks there pronounce it like the word marsh, which is also how I've always pronounced it. However, somebody linked what seems to be a bizarre TV commercial for this game, where the name is pronounced Marche.
My name is Marche.
You could look at this as an official source, but I'm not going to, just because it's so weird. So I'm just going to stick with Marsh. And for all the other fantasy names and names of fantasy races, I'm probably not going to bother looking it all up. Cool. Every snowball deals just 1 damage in the tutorial fight, and it ends after a few turns, so no one's getting knocked out here. We get a cutscene with the bullies ganging up on the timid kid Mute, pelting him with snowballs, and eventually a rock hidden inside a snowball. That's assault, and the little fucker totally denies it. The teacher takes control and hopefully metes out appropriate punishments. Our main trio, Marsh, Mute, and certified girl boss Ritz, agree to meet at Marsh's place after Mute buys this fantasy book, and Marsh fetches his little brother Doned from the hospital. We learn that Doned has some kind of medical issue that he was born with, which requires regular hospital visits. On the way, the trio encounters Mute's father, referred to here by last name Randell, who seems to be a little bit down on his luck. We learn that Mute's mother had passed away, and as Marche leaves, Ritz mentions that Marche doesn't have a father. Later that day, Ritz and Mute arrive at Marche's place with fantasy book in tow. They pop the bad boy open to find that it's in some foreign language. They speculate about it being some kind of magic book, and Mute muses about being able to live in a fantasy world like the one in the book. Mute actually name drops Final Fantasy as a game world he'd like to live in. Even if you've never played this game before, you can probably tell where this is going. Mute and Ritz eventually leave, and then we finally get isekai'd into the game's fantasy world. Our main man Marche is surprisingly calm about finding himself suddenly in a completely foreign fantastical land. He runs into a couple of Banga, one of the game's fantasy races, and appropriately remarks that they are lizards. Oops, that's a slur. Straight to jail. Wait, no, not just yet. Another member of a fantasy race comes into the picture to save our boy Marche, a Moogle this time, a race you might be familiar with from other Final Fantasy games. The Moogle makes the excuse that Marshipu is some kind of country boy who isn't used to seeing Banga, and just when it looks like they've gotten away with it, the Banga Bros decide to engage our heroes in combat. Much too suddenly, an armor-clad referee warps into the field atop an armor-clad chocobo, and the battle begins much in the same way as the tutorial snowball fight. If you're not familiar, a chocobo is a big yellow bird that's a signature creature in Final Fantasy games. The Moogle, who hasn't actually introduced himself yet, but who can be identified within the battle as Montblanc, explains that the newcomer is a judge who is there to enforce the laws on this engagement. This is one of the primary mechanics of Tactics Advance, and from what I've been able to read, it's not a very popular one. Basically, laws are rules in combat, and when you break one, you get a penalty. For this battle, the law forbids the use of items. Every time I've played this game, I've done so on an emulator, and so I always had access to save states, and I remember that I would always just use those to undo any law breaking I would inevitably but accidentally commit. For this playthrough, I thought about maybe not doing that in order to experience the game as it was designed. But then I did some reading to refresh my memory about the mechanic, and it sounds awful and many on the internet agree. So we'll see what I decide to do. We'll get into more detail about laws and judges as we go on with the game. The battle continues and Montblanc urges Marche to use his sword. Our boy is once again unfazed by his current circumstances and actually uses the deadly weapon he so suddenly possesses. Montblanc is a black mage, one of the jobs you're able to assign to your characters in this game, which means that he wields offensive magic. The 1-2 punch of Marche's sword and Montblanc's magic leaves the Banga upon whom you'd committed a hate crime knocked out. The judge awards 1 judge point for this act of senseless violence. Our heroes proceed to dispatch the Banga's friend and the engagement ends. We get a cutscene where our Banga opponent uses a healing item to demonstrate what happens when laws are broken. Man, do I hate the sound of that whistle. The judge issues the poor Banga a red card and hauls his ass, or should I say tail, off the prison. This is actually inconsistent with how the law system actually works in the game. Performing forbidden actions that don't result in a KO should only warrant a yellow card, which allows the unit to remain in the battle, but comes with a random penalty that's applied after the battle. Marche thanks Montblanc for his help, and the Moogle proceeds to lecture our hero about hate speech. Moogle? More like wokel. Am I right? Despite Montblanc's best efforts, Marche continues his bigoted ways by calling his savior a stuffed animal. Montblanc is flabbergasted and interrogates the newcomer about where he comes from. Marche attempts to explain his circumstances, and we learn that he now finds himself in the fantasy country of Ivalice, which just so happens to be the same name as the modern-day town he resides in, Saint Ivalice. Marche takes a page out of Mute's book and name drops Final Fantasy, explaining he'd seen Banga there before. At this point, Montblanc should have run far away from this crazy person. Instead, he's intrigued, ascribing some kind of meaning to the pair's meeting. Montblanc urges Marche to stick with him, and introductions are finally made. Montblanc takes Marche over to the pub where his clan is. He describes a clan as a group of people who work together. Huh. Is this game for literal children? Montblanc inducts you into the clan and you're given the opportunity to give the group a name. And you'd better make it a Koopa one. The default name is Nutsy and that's what I'm choosing for this playthrough. But I remember way back when dubbing my clan Watchmen, as I was in my edgelord era where I read a bunch of Vertigo comics and picked fights with random people online for being religious. Ah, cringe times. We're then taken to the world map screen where we'll be placing location symbols, meaning you get to choose the layout of Ivalice one location at a time. Certain layouts grant you access to certain weapons and items. The game encourages you to find the special combinations yourself, but there's no redoing location placements, so being an anxious little a-hole, I had to go online for more information. Most results referred to a guide by AstroBlue, which I found on Game FAQs, and reading it I learned that the whole system is quite complicated. I have this very strong completionist urge when playing games. I really dislike missing out on content. Unfortunately, this game's treasure hunt system is designed such that you can't get every single treasure in a single playthrough. So I'm going to have to commit to a certain layout and live with what I get. This led me down a rabbit hole of other missables in this game and it seems like a lot. I don't really understand a lot of it as I'm still starting out. The smartest course of action would be to just not do 100% completion. According to How Long to Beat, this game takes 114 hours to complete 100%, and if I did that for this video, I don't think it's getting made. So I'm going to have to fight my nature here. We'll see how that goes. For now, I'm going to follow one of the map layouts from the AstroBlue guide and hope that these are the actual items I'm going to want when I get them. Once you plop down Sprom, your first location symbol, the game gives you control and doesn't really tell you what to do next, which is a little weird. Maybe this is just me being a spoiled modern gamer. I have played this game and other games like it before, so I do know what to look for. In the town we're currently in, Peril, there's a pub where you can read rumors and take/quit missions. There's a shop for equipment and items. And there's a monster bank where they'll tell you that you need to capture some monsters first. In the party menu, we can check out our clan members. In addition to Marche and Montblanc, we get 4 others in our initial party. It seems like every race is accounted for here with a human soldier, Banga white monk, and 2 new races, a Numo white mage, and Vieira archer. Moving over to the newly placed location, Sprom, doesn't trigger any sort of story event like I thought it would. I then went into the pub and accepted a mission from the proprietor who appears to be identical to the one in Cyril, Nurse Joy style. It's time for our very first mission as a member of Clan Nutsy. This one is called Herb Picking and involves picking some herbs. Who'da thunk it? This is an SRPG though, so of course we first have to deal with some monsters before we can go up picking. It kinda sorta seems like we're just attacking these creatures unprovoked. But hey, video game logic, right? These guys are labeled monsters, and in video games, you kill monsters. We've got some goblins and the sprite here, and it's a pretty straightforward, easy battle, unsurprisingly. The hit rates are kind of annoying though. Is it like this in FF Tactics as well? After the battle, Marche has to remind Montblanc about what they're here for, and the Moogle remarks that the herb can be found all over the place. I'm taking this to mean that if Montblanc had been paying attention, they could have just picked those herbs without having to slaughter the indigenous population. You get another location symbol to plop down, and I got a treasure hunt out of this, yielding some red boots. Now, I'm about to go spoiled modern gamer here again, because I could not for the life of me figure out what these boots did. I went into the party screen, into Marche's equipment, and scrolled over to the boots. No stats for the boots here. So I press select, but that only gives me a description and tells me what classes are able to equip the boots. I press the R button for info, but that only shows the abilities you can learn. To find what I was looking for, I had to go back to the main party screen and then press the start button to browse all of my items. That seemed pretty ridiculous, so I did a quick search online and found out that you can hold the start button when choosing equipment, and that will show you how the item will affect your unit's stats. Why wasn't I informed of this? What else am I missing? Oh god. I need to find a manual, don't I? Okay, yep, here we go. There's a PDF of the manual on Nintendo's website. It's 79 pages long, but it's in 5 languages, so it's really only 15 pages. They do explain the start button trick here. Please tell me you all know what a manual is. Gen Z and Alpha have heard of manuals, right? Maybe not for a video game necessarily, but other things have manuals too. Do not, under any circumstances, go down into the comment section and say you're so young that you've never heard of manuals. Okay? Thank you. Jeez. This little detour also led me to find the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide for Tactics Advance. You've seen a physical strategy guide before, right? The strategy guide has some pretty in-depth information, including every single class and mission in the game. I wasn't sure if I was going to use this, but I do eventually get quite a bit of use out of it. I did a few more missions from the 2 available pubs, one of which was a dispatch mission, which entails sending one of your clan members off on their own for a certain number of days to accomplish the mission. My guy Chad, not to be confused with my Chad guy, successfully completed the mission and a new party member comes up offering to join the clan. Okay, cool. You're in, I guess? I'm still not really sure what kind of party I'm going to shoot for. I haven't changed anyone out of their default classes yet. I unfortunately could not resist doing an online search for Best Jobs FFTA, but there were a lot of answers and they kinda meant nothing to me at this point in the game, so we'll just wing it for now. I guess I didn't play this game as much as FF Tactics because I still remember my go-to build for the latter. The abilities I'd go for were the highest move plus, I think it was move plus 3 from the Thief job, Blade Grasp from Samurai, and 2 swords from Ninja. The final job would be something like Knight or Samurai for heavy armor, and it kinda wouldn't matter too much what the action abilities were because they'd mostly just be attacking with their dual wield swords. One of the initial missions available in the game is called Thesis Hunt, and it seems to be the one that drives the main story forward. I'm not sure how you're supposed to distinguish those from like side quests. I usually like to do as much side content as possible first before moving on to the main story, but I ended up doing this one early. At the end of it, Montblanc says he thinks the clan Nutsy is ready for the clan wars, where clans compete for turf. Marche goes all imposter syndrome because, well, I mean, yeah, he's a literal schoolboy suddenly tasked with violent mercenary work, but Montblanc reassures him and we're off to war, I guess? I'm not really sure exactly what the clan wars entail, but we're just going to keep on taking missions. Eventually, we see some red-clad figures appear on the world map, and these represent other clans who will engage you in battle if you end up in the same location as them on the map. These seem to serve as the random encounters in this game, which is an improvement from FF Tactics in my opinion, where you just had locations that could host encounters, and it seemed like just a coin flip whether you'd get one or not. It was a little bit nerve-wracking, especially when you're traversing multiple of these on the way to your destination. A few more new party members have joined the clan, and I'm not sure how this mechanic works exactly. Is there just a random chance that you get a new party member after each mission completion? For now, I'm just accepting everyone, but eventually we will have to be a bit more judicious as there is a max clan size of 24. Ideally, we'd have several extra clan members to be able to do dispatch missions without being short-handed in battles. I'd also love to have multiple members of each race to be able to experiment with the game's many jobs. Perhaps I'm missing something, but it seems like some missions don't tell you where to go to accomplish them. Like there should be a field in the mission information section saying the exact location the mission takes place in. Some missions will allude to it in the title or the description, like Snow in Lutia for example, but not all of them do. I checked the strategy guide and I couldn't find any sort of in-game function for this. It just says to refer to the mission section of the guide. A sort of solution for this is to press the R button on any location on the map to see if there are missions there. You can do this without having to move to that location, which is good, but it's still not exactly what I'm looking for. You'd have to check each location one by one to find a specific mission, and when the map eventually fills up, I imagine that would get tedious. We'll see if this actually becomes an issue or not. We go on taking more missions, and this seems to be how the rest of the game will go. Most of the missions aren't all that interesting, and there are 300 of them in total, so we won't be talking about each and every single one of them. I'm just taking every mission I can get and making sure my party members have equipment that can teach them some new abilities so as not to waste the AP you get from each battle. This means I'm hopping between jobs constantly for each and every party member. The game's next story mission is called the Cheetahs, and in it we're reunited with a familiar face, certified girl boss Ritz. Apparently she's acclimated about as well as Marche has and is now leading her own clan. Both clans are here for the same quarry, so they decide to work together to get the job done. When I first did this mission, the law had missiles as forbidden. Unfortunately, Ritz's clan member Shara is an archer, and arrows fall under the missiles category, making her effectively useless. I had to reload and move around to change the law before going back into the fight, which is annoying. We get a mid-battle conversation between Ritz and Marche, where the former expresses surprise that timid boy Marche is engaged in violent clan work. Afterward, the battle goes on without any issue, which has been true for pretty much every battle so far. This is a pretty easy game. It seems like the enemy AI is pretty dumb, doing things like attacking with arrows when the target has the block arrows reaction ability, or rushing forward with a healer and attacking for very little damage with a staff. After the fight, Ritz introduces Marche to her fellow clan member Shara, the aforementioned archer. Marche then asks Ritz if she knows anything about the whole isekai situation they find themselves in. Ritz says they've been transported into the world of Final Fantasy, but with their real-world town of St. Ivalice mixed in. Marche asks how it could have happened, but Ritz doesn't care about the why. She likes it here and does not want to go back to their mundane, normal lives. Marche is very surprised by this, and before leaving, Ritz tells him that he can go ahead and try to change everything back, but she won't be helping. We get a cutscene when we return to town where Montblanc notices that Marche is enjoying himself in this world. Marche agrees, saying he's always wanted to fight monsters and use magic. Let's try not to think too hard about how our hero has suddenly learned how to fight. Montblanc encourages Marche to stay in this fantasy world and make their clan the strongest in the land. Marche tries to feign enthusiasm, but Montblanc sees through him. In truth, when Marche had seen Ritz in the previous fight, he really thought that he'd be able to go back home. Marche gets a bit doomer, which is understandable, and Montblanc tells him to keep his chin up. Not a care in the world, this Moogle. The next story mission is Desert Peril in the Elude Sands. So far, every story mission has shown up at the very top of the missions list at the pub, and that seems to be how you're supposed to distinguish them from the side missions. Apparently, the monsters here at the desert have gone crazy, but that's not really apparent in the battle. They just seem like your regular old monsters. Marche asks Montblanc about it, and the Moogle tells him about the crystal theory. It all starts to sound a little bit conspiratorial, but of course this is a world of magic and monsters, so anything's possible. Montblanc makes mention of the palace, but I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. He also talks about a wrinkle in space, and maybe I'm slow, but I have no idea where that came from. Seems like he just said it out of the blue, and Marche is all like, interesting. We get a bit more information on the crystals from a rumor at the pub. Crystals are apparently magic in solid form and are rumored to be made by the palace, although they deny it. Okay, that doesn't really mean anything to us right now, but I'm sure it will eventually. Right now, let's just keep taking missions. I've so far cleared 30 missions in about 8 hours of gameplay. This means I'm 10% of the way to completion. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to do every mission for this video, but I know I'm going to want to eventually. Our next story mission is Twisted Flow, where Clan Nutsy is tasked with investigating claims that the Ulay River is twisting and warping. At the river, Marche sees nothing out of the ordinary until this pulsating black portal swallows our boy up and warps him into some dark ruins. He looks around and finds this big floating crystal. The conspiracy theorists were right, you hate to see it. The wrinkle in space stuff starts to make sense here, although I maintain that it was still kind of a non sequitur from Montblanc. Marche suddenly hears a disembodied voice demanding he speak his name. A strange creature steps out of the crystal and repeats the demand. Not sure how to describe this thing. It's a golem-like suit of armor with a Zeus beard, I guess. Marche complies with the command, and the creature identifies itself as the Totema Famfret, tasked with expelling intruders, namely Marche. Some more monsters warp in, and curiously so does a judge. When in doubt, bust some heads, I guess. This is the first fight where I've ever felt even somewhat threatened in this game. One of the Ahriman monsters unleashes a roulette attack, which randomly kills one unit on the map, regardless if it's friend or foe, and of course it landed on one of my guys. Famfrit then unleashes a Breath of God attack that kills Montblanc in one hit. Thankfully that was the worst of it and we were able to get the win, even down 2 clan members. Afterward, Marche proceeds to interrogate the totem about the crystal. Famfrit describes the crystal as the thread that binds our world, and states that he was made by skilled machinists called the White Ones to protect the world. Marche makes the connection between the White Ones and the Mughals, which I did not even think about. Famfrit disappears, the crystal shatters, and the black portal once again envelops all. A figure briefly warps into view and Marche recognizes it as his good buddy Mute. The scene then shifts over to Mute's room inside what I'm assuming is the palace that was alluded to earlier. Mute's father walks in to find his distraught son and asks him what's wrong. Mute tells his father that he just remembered the snowball fight where he got smacked with a rock. The older Randell is confused, and Mute remembers that he's a prince in this world, a member of the royal family, and not some schoolboy getting bullied and pelted with rocks. Quite the reveal. Except I already knew about this, not because I remembered it from my previous playthroughs, but because I read about it in the characters section of the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide. Oops. Mute's mother then walks into the room alongside a Numo attendant Babus. In case you've forgotten, Mute's mother had already passed away in the real world, so death doesn't appear to be a barrier to appearing in this fantasy world. We learn that she is known as Queen Remedy in this world, and that her husband is Sid, the highest judge in the land. I guess this is a bit of a reveal as well. If you're not familiar, Sid is a recurring name in the Final Fantasy series and has become one of its trademarks. Mute wants to make the law stronger and his mother obliges. Sid is hesitant, but then he learns of the destruction of one of the crystals, and this convinces him to do it. This isn't going to be good for Marshipu and the gang. Speaking of Marche, he gets warped back to the river where he reflects on the disembodied voice he heard right before his return, describing the crystals as threads whose dissolution would lead to the appearance of a new world. Marche concludes that he needs to destroy all of the crystals in order to return home. Defeating Famfrit has made the Totema battle command available for Mughals. We also get a new town to plop down onto the world map called Kadawan. At Kadawan, Marche overhears some folks talking about the new, stronger laws. A Numo comes up to Marche and brazenly proclaims that laws will be a thing of the past. Marche is dubious. This dude seems like a scammer after all, but no, he's not. This is Ezel Berbier, purveyor of the Antilaw, which are purportedly able to nullify laws. The suspicious Numo doesn't actually introduce himself as Ezel, but it's pretty obvious to everyone except for poor Marshipu. Going into our first fight with the new laws, we see that we've gone from 1 forbidden action and 1 recommended one to 2 each. Yikes. The actions themselves are new as well, which I learned from the strategy guide. I did a few missions and then ended up back in Kadawan, where I got into a surprise engagement, which turns out to be our next story mission, Antilaws. Ezel is back, and he's being hunted by some very angry pursuers. Marche finally catches on to the Numo's identity and decides to help him out of this bind. In a mid-combat conversation, my impression of Ezel as something of a scammer is reinforced as we learn that he's being accused of price gouging to the tune of 100,000 gil. I initially assumed that you'd have to protect Ezel in this fight, but that didn't turn out to be the case, as he did manage to get his Numo ass knocked out, and I was still able to win the battle. Ezel thanks Marche for his help despite the fact that Marche let his ass die. And then we get a surprise appearance by none other than Judge Master Sid Randell himself. He is of course here to apprehend Ezel for trying to circumvent the laws of the land. Ezel resists, and Sid makes use of an advanced law to restrict all of Ezel's abilities. Not to worry though, as this is the purveyor of anti-laws after all, and he promptly pulls one out, allowing Ezel and Marche to escape in a flash of light. Seems more like a flashbang than an anti-law, but you know, cutscene logic and all that. Ezel and Marche meet up back at the pub, and the former tells the latter to visit his shop in Cadawan where he deals in law cards. These cards allow you to nullify and add certain laws to battles. I don't think I ever really engaged with this mechanic during my playthroughs of this game because I just used save states to bypass laws. We'll see if that changes for this playthrough. The next story mission, Diamond Rain, has Clan Nutsy investigating the allegation that diamonds are raining down from the sky. Marche hopes there's a connection to the crystals here, and he does find some sparkly things falling out of the sky, but they eventually disappear and he's left to just speculate. Okay, cool. That mission seemed like kind of nothing story-wise, but perhaps we'll see the significance of it later on. Hot Awakening is our next story mission, and we've got another black portal here at the Rhoda Volcano. Marche is warped over to another crystal room, but instead of a single totema to contend with, we get multiple of these smaller fiery crystals called Ultima Crystals. The ensuing battle is a bit weird. The crystals only have one ability, Logos, that has a chance of inflicting charm and lowering attack. No damage. They can't move either, so they're really not a threat at all. With all of the smaller crystals dealt with, the main crystal shatters, and the room is once again enveloped in darkness, with Mute once again warping into view. It seems that with every crystal we shatter, Mute remembers more and more of his traumatic life in the real world. Marche is warped back to Rhoda Volcano where he puts the puzzle pieces together, concluding that this world that he's trying to erase is a product of Mute's desire. Post-battle, we get the Numo Totema Ultima. I still haven't used Totemas in battle yet. I also still have never used combos. Am I missing out? I've got a main party of about 11 members, including Marche and Montblanc at this point, and I feel like this is probably the crew I'm going to be taking to the end of the game. It does kind of feel like too many members, especially with how little experience it seems like you get in battle. I may have to drop some of these guys eventually. I was also able to get a couple of these semi-secret party members, and I'm not really sure if I want to use them. I've also mapped out the jobs I'd like everyone to have by the end, but that's still subject to change. The action ability Airrender is my go-to at this point in the game. I just love it. It's a ranged attack, doesn't cost MP, and deals a lot of damage regardless of what weapon you have equipped. I just put it on all of my humans and Banga, and they proceed to wreck opponents. The other races just end up as support and healer types. I'm a bit unsure of what to do with Montblanc right now. My plan has him as a Black Mage and Time Mage, but it doesn't feel like these are very good classes. I might pivot to Juggler instead of Time Mage. We'll see, I guess. In the game's next story mission, Magic Wood, our intrepid crew of environmentalists is tasked with tracking down some illegal loggers. Much like Diamond Rain, this seems to be a pretty nothing mission story-wise. In the next story mission though, Emerald Keep, we get some juicy developments. Marche and the gang head for Salika Keep hoping to find a crystal, but instead they're met by Babus, the Numo we previously saw alongside Queen Remedy. Babus introduces himself as personal mage to Prince Mute, who has ordered Babus to survey the area, keeping an eye out for someone out to do the prince harm. That means Marche, of course. Marche starts blathering about wanting to change the world back to the way it was before, and this is nothing but crazy talk to Babus, so this puts the Numo on alert. Babus talked a big game, but in the battle, he charged recklessly into my party's range and went down with just 2 air renders. Embarrassing. The objective of this fight is just to defeat the boss, namely Babus, and so it was over just like that. I haven't been consulting the strategy guide for each and every mission, but when I have, I feel like it's always telling me to steal a bunch of equipment from the opposition. I looked up a stealing guide and found that I've already missed a bunch of rare equipment, and that you can actually steal abilities as well. Yeah, I can't be bothered. We'll see if this comes back to bite me in the ass later on, but this just seems like a case of optimizing the fun out of a game. Babus is not at all gracious in defeat and vows to get you next time. Yeah, okay buddy. Don't go rushing in without backup next time, okay? In our next story mission, Pale Company, Marche proves that he ain't afraid of no ghosts as he follows a spirit into an all too familiar black portal. Another crystal guarded by another totema meets us on the other side. This totema is called Adramalek, and it calls on 3 dragon buddies to face our heroes. This quartet does hit hard, but fortunately I brought along one of my clan members with the life spell, which revives fallen characters, and I was able to prevail. With the totema and crystal dealt with, Marche is warped back to the cave he was initially investigating. None other than Babus, personal mage to Prince Mute, shows up to confront our hero once more. Another black portal appears and Mute appears calling for Babus before once again disappearing. Babus then entertains the notion of multiple worlds, asking Marche how much this other world is worth to him. Before Marche can give a proper answer, Babus rushes off to his precious princess side. We get a new town to place on the map, Bagaba Port, and moving there brings up a cutscene. We meet Montblanc's brother Nono, a gadgeteer who has just built the airship of his dreams. Unfortunately, he's already managed to get into an accident in it. He describes it as a hit and run and somehow knows where the culprits can be found. Of course, our nosy do-gooder Marche wants to help, but doing so would send the clan to a place called Jagd. Montblanc explains the Jagds are lawless places where judges can't go. Marche doesn't see the issue as he doesn't seem to be a fan of the whole law system. He's just like me, for real. Montblanc explains that without judges, it's possible to actually die in battle as opposed to just getting knocked out. Marche's hunger for retribution is insatiable, however, and so Montblanc agrees to go as long as they're really careful. Chill, Montblanc, we've got save states. Before I attempt to say this word again, I really need to get a pronunciation check. Okay, so apparently this is a German word and is actually pronounced Jagd. Our next story mission is called Jagd Hunt, which is actually redundant as Jagd translates to hunt. This mission takes place automatically upon setting foot at Jagd and wasn't acquired for Gil at the pub unlike most other missions. The battle itself isn't too tough, but it seems like all of my hit rate luck ran out in it. For pretty much the entire game, I feel like I've hit on everything above like 70%. But in this battle, I missed a lot of these. We did manage to win the fight, and none of my guys died while doing so. In this game, you have until the end of the battle to revive any dead party members or else they're lost permanently. This is unlike the system in FF Tactics where you get 3 turns to revive a dead party member before they're gone forever, or alternatively you can just finish the mission before the 3 turns are up and they will survive. We need to return to Bagaba Port to tell Nono the good news of our successful revenge on his behalf. Marche even offers Nono the reward money for capturing the hit and run criminals to use for repairing his ship. I guess those guys didn't end up dying permanently despite that battle taking place in a Jagd. Marche isn't a murderer yet. Nono decides to turn his airship into a merchant ship in order to pay for repairs. This is a gameplay feature but appears initially to be exclusively available when linking. Oh god, here we go again with the archaic gaming tech. Okay, young ones, listen up. The Game Boy Advance had this thing called the link cable that was used to link your console with someone else's in order to do multiplayer or transfer data between games. Yes, you had to physically connect your console with a cable in order to communicate with another console. This was back before the internet became the ubiquitous thing it is today, although I feel like the internet should have already been a thing in 2001 when the Game Boy Advance came out. But anyway, back to Nono's shop. Despite this seeming to be a link-only feature, I was able to buy some trade items from the normal town shops. Come to think of it, I've also been able to accept missions that I later found were available only through linking. That's a little strange. I haven't been linking, although I have accidentally picked the link option from the start menu on the world map a couple of times. Is that all it takes? The next story mission, The Bounty, has Clan Nutsy chasing Clan Ox around the map to ask them about this bounty that the palace has placed. Seems like a bad idea, considering Marche is public enemy number 1 right now, and this bounty is probably on him. But we have no choice but to rush headlong into this encounter. Our fearless but clueless leader readily gives up his name and that of the clan when asked by Clan Ox, and only then does he realize that the bounty is on him. It's fine, Marche, we'll just have to maim some guys to make up for your obliviousness. There's a mission posted at the pub called Hit Again, and geez, it's Lil Bro Nono calling for more revenge on yet another hit and run. Either he needs to get somebody else to drive that airship for him, or he's actually just tricking his big bro into roughing up some guys he doesn't like. Either way, we're off to do battle once more at Jagd Dorsa. Once these hooligans are taken care of, there's no mention of capturing anybody, so I'm assuming they're all dead, making this the very first instance of murder by Clan Nazi. So proud of our plucky little squad of underdogs and upstarts. Up next for story missions is Golden Clock, where Clan Nazi heads off to Jaros Sands to investigate some counterfeit sand clock sellers. At the desert, Marche encounters Ritz and Shara, who are after the same clock forgers. You know what that means, it's team up time! We get a couple of mid-battle conversations here. Ritz deduces that Mute is the one who changed the world based on his newfound high status in this foreign Ivalice. She also tries to get Marche to talk about why exactly he wants to change the world back. The way she sees it, things are better for Marche here in this new world. Marche answers by throwing the question back at Ritz, but she's pretty firm about her desire to stay in this fantasy world. Marche keeps pressing and seems to find a crack in her armor. There's a specific reason that Ritz likes this world, and I actually think I remember what it is, although it won't be revealed until later. Something about her hair? After the battle, the two friends have some not-so-tender moments, culminating in a warning from Ritz that she might just join sides with Mute since they both want to stay in this world. With Marche gone, Shara confronts Ritz about her insistence on staying in this world, and she reveals that her hair is naturally pink in this world instead of the white that she has to dye in the real world. Okay, there's the reveal. I didn't think it would happen so soon. Also, why would she dye her hair pink instead of something natural like brown? The kids make fun of white but not pink. We also learned that Ritz's mother used to do the dyeing, and they'd have to do it every single day, with her mother looking like she was about to cry every single time. So it makes sense that the whole hair color thing would be so traumatizing for Ritz. We then get a quick scene at the palace where Mute is having a bit of a freak out over Marche still being a free man. Boy? Free boy? Back in town, Marche reflects on his progress. 3 totema down, 2 to go. Just then, Ezel saunters in and the two commiserate over their shared fugitive status. Although it's Marche now who seems to be the main focus of the authorities. Ezel warns Marche that they're searching the clans one by one before heading off back to his shop. Once we set foot in Muscadet, the latest location symbol we just placed, will be thrust into our next story mission, Scouring Time. The palace is really desperate, it seems, as we see a judge wrongfully arresting a random Mughal just because there were reports that Marche was seen with a Mughal. Marche is unable to stand idly by as this miscarriage of justice takes place, and so he loudly identifies himself to the judge and demands the release of all innocents. The judge wants to verify his identity first, and this causes a battle to ensue for some reason. Marche is calling for the Judge Master to come and verify his identity, and this doesn't happen until we've taken out all of the enemies on the battlefield. Sid strides in atop his chocobo and recognizes Marche from his previous encounter with Ezel, but is unable to recognize him beyond that. Sid orders the clan be taken in for questioning. At the prison, Babus positively identifies Marche, and Marche attempts to explain his quest to return home to Sid. Sid urges him to abandon his quest to destroy the crystals, as this would mean the end of the world. He tries to tempt Marche into staying in this world with the promise of continued fame and fortune with his clan. Marche emphatically refuses, stressing the fact that this is all an illusion and that Mute needs to face reality. Another one of those black portals pops into the room and Sid refers to it as a seam. Babus accuses Marche of summoning it before all three are warped away to another crystal room. Marche makes an impassioned speech and we're thrust into the next story mission, Scouring Time 2. In this fight, Marche is flying solo as he attempts to destroy the crystal with Babus standing in his way. I don't remember this fight at all, and it of course harkens back to the infamous one-on-one fight with Ygraph in FF Tactics. Babus has a spell called Demi that halves its target's HP, but I got lucky and it missed at a 78% chance to hit. In a mid-battle conversation, Marche attempts to reason with Sid, but it seems that he doesn't remember the real world in the same way that Marche and Ritz do. That single lucky miss was all I needed to survive this encounter, as I was able to take Babus out with 3 air renders, while all he was able to do was leave Marche's health at a quarter of max with 2 hits of Demi. The objective of this fight isn't actually to take Babus out, but to destroy all of the Exodus fruit in the room. I'm not sure if there's a way to do that without having to kick Babus's Numo ass, but it is much easier to do once he's down for the count. After the fight, we see a vision of the real world featuring Mute and his father. The trio are then warped back to the prison, and Sid regains his memories of the real world. He then declares the separation of the judges from the palace from this point forward. He also sets Clan Nutsi free, much to Babus's chagrin. Sid pretty much washes his hands clean of this whole conflict between Mute and Marche. News breaks out about the Judge Master's decision, and the clans are abuzz. Meanwhile, Sid says his goodbyes to his son at the palace. Mute is obviously not happy, and Babus begs Sid to stay to no avail. Queen Remedy walks in with an unknown boy, and she tells Sid that the boy is more powerful than Sid now and will serve as his replacement. The queen introduces the boy as Llednar Twem, Mute's new attendant. Llednar Twem is Mute Randell backwards, in case you hadn't caught that. The significance of that remains to be seen. Back out on the world map, we get another law upgrade. There's 3 of them now. What fun! In the next story mission, The Big Find, the clan is headed for the Uladon Bog to find some historical artifacts or something. It doesn't really matter, as this whole thing is actually a trap, presumably set by Llednar Twerp. After the battle, Marche senses a presence watching over them. This is the Twerp, right? It's gotta be. This feels like a good time to give an update on my clan. I have 13 members, including Marche and Montblanc, and it does feel like a little bit too much. It seems like I'm a tad bit under-leveled on story missions lately, although that just means my level numbers are lower. Not that the fights are difficult, because they're really not. So I'm just gonna keep rolling with what I'm doing until it starts not working. I'm still kind of experimenting with jobs, so none of these are definitively final yet, but I don't see any major changes happening. Marche is a fighter and paladin, and Airrender has lost a bit of its effectiveness, but Marche is still pretty strong. Montblanc is a black mage and juggler, and he's still kind of not that great. I have a human, Chad, splitting time between hunter, ninja, and thief. I have 2 Banga, one of whom is a gladiator and Templar, while the other is a dragoon, defender, and bishop. I have 3 Viera, one of whom is an assassin and sniper, while the other 2 are both summoner red mage hybrids. I know it's dumb to have 2, but I was already building a Viera toward the whole double cast summons build, and then I got the semi-secret character Eldena, who already knows double cast, and I kind of just kept using both. I should abandon one at some point. I have 2 Numo, one of whom is a sage and white mage, while the other is an alchemist and illusionist. And finally, I have 2 more Mughals, one of whom is a gunner and juggler, while the other is another semi-secret character, Linny, who is a Mog Knight and juggler. Can you tell I like juggler? I should also cut one of my 3 Mughals, and unfortunately, it feels like Montblanc is the odd one out. I'm missing a blue mage, but it might just be too late to start developing one. Our next story mission is Desert Patrol, and in it, we see a familiar face. Why, it's none other than Marche's little brother Doned, except there's something a little different about him here. He can walk. Oh, also he rats his big brother the f out to some ruffians. Dick move. Fortunately, these guys aren't that tough. After the battle, Marche interrogates one of the ruffians. The Banga says Doned promised to sell them information about Marche, but doesn't say anything more useful like where Doned might be found. Quiet Sands is the next story mission, and it brings Marche face to face with the Twerp for the first time. Before the 2 can boogie, one of those seams pops up and warps the 2 to a crystal room, the very last crystal in fact. Judge Master Sid pops into the room as well just as Llednar is about to attack. He uses a law card to ban whatever it is that the Twerp was about to do, saying that using that power here would break the crystal. Sid turns to Marche and urges him to run away, insisting that there's no hope for him to win. We're not going anywhere though, so it's battle time. The objective of this fight is to kill the boss, Llednar, but no matter what attack you throw at him, he receives 0 damage. After a couple of turns, we get a cutscene where the dwarf attempts to use the power that Sid outlawed, Omega. The Judge Master issues him a red card and presumably he's off to prison. The fight ends and Sid offers to warp the clan back out of the crystal room. Marche cannot be swayed from his mission though, and Sid provides no further resistance. It's time to face off with the final totema, Mateus, who transforms into the form of Ritz and tries to convince Marche to stay in this world. Mateus also does this with the forms of Doned and then Mute. The fake Mute plays dirty, making mention of Marche's absent parents. This is still not enough to sway our hero, and Mateus pulls its final trick, taking on the form of Marche himself, before reverting to its true form and summoning some vampire friends. It's battle time once again. Again, we only need to defeat the boss, Mateus, to win this fight, so it's not that tough. The vampires are undead, so I was able to use the healing summon unicorn to deal damage to them while also replenishing my clan's health. With Mateus defeated, the final crystal shatters. The world doesn't transform back though, and Marche is left wondering what's going on. A disembodied voice explains that the world is still wanted. Queen Remedy appears in a flash of darkness and repeats herself. This is a little bit stupid. It seems like the crystals were pretty pointless, no? Before we're warped back to the desert, Remedy asserts that it's not just Mute who still wants this world, it's Marche as well. It seems like our boy has a bit of soul searching to do. Sid asks him about his next move and Marche says he's going to go see Mute. Back in town, Marche overhears some folks talking about Audience Day or Gift Day colloquially. Montblanc explains it as a day where audiences are granted in the palace, depending on one's connections or alternatively, one's gift. This is the perfect opportunity for Marche to talk to Mute. Montblanc suggests that No make the gift, and we're headed for the Materite Wood to get some Materite for the next story mission, Materite Now. At the forest, we're ambushed by a group that apparently got tipped off by little bro Doned. I've started stealing now, even turning Montblanc into a dedicated thief, and there's lots of goodies from this group. Unfortunately, I left the white mage alive for too long, and she has the full life spell that revives with full health, and so this battle got a little more annoying than I would have liked. I managed to steal everything I wanted, and ultimately finished the job without further issue. After the fight, Doned actually appears and swipes the Materite from Marche. Big Bro attempts to get it back, but Doned smashes it on the ground. This little fucker. Can we put up a job at the pub to put this guy back in a wheelchair? Doned throws a tantrum, complaining that Marche has everything in the real world, while he has nothing, and so he's going to stop Marche. After Doned runs off, Marche says to himself that Doned actually has something he wants. I wonder what that is. Attention from their mother? Bervenia Palace appears automatically on a predetermined spot in the world map, and it looks like we'll have to go there to advance the story. It's Audience Day, and Marche is nervous about being here in the palace with the bounty on him and everything. Montblanc is very nonchalant about it, telling him to just act like he belongs. I'm with Marche on this one. Get a cloak on for Christ's sake. It looks like Nono was still able to make a gift with what was left of the Materite from the last story mission. Marche calls it a Lugaborg, and no, I don't know what the heck that is. Once inside, Marche's fears are swiftly shown to be justified as an armed cadre appears to arrest our boy. Clan Nutsy? More like Clan Dumb as a Bag of Rocks, am I right? Montblanc still can't believe this has happened for some reason, and then it's revealed that someone, presumably Doned, tipped off the authorities. The ensuing fight isn't too difficult. I went around stealing everyone's gear again, and okay, it is fun leaving your opponents with no equipment. Maybe I should have trained up some good thieves earlier. Having survived this encounter, the sensible thing to do would be to escape the palace and try to find a different way of getting to Mute. But this is Marche and Clan Nutsy we're talking about, so instead they just stubbornly stick around until more guards come in. I guess the plan is just to keep fighting until there are no guards left. Actually, that is a good plan considering how strong the clan is compared to every opponent we've faced so far. But of course, that's not what's going to happen. Babus warps in and casts Stop on the guards, offering to take Marche to the prince. Marche is skeptical of Babus's motives, and the Numo explains that he wants Marche to help him figure out what Mute is really thinking and to learn about the other world. We're off to the throne room to confront Mute. The little brat accuses Babus of betraying him, and it seems that Marche has been able to get through to Babus, who is now amenable to the idea that Mute is using this new world as an unhealthy escape from his real life. Mute takes a page out of Doned's book and throws a tantrum, refusing to listen to Babus. Queen Remedy warps into the room to console her son, and Marche tries to convince his friend that this woman isn't his mother. Mute is unconvinced, and he and the queen warp away. Llednar then warps into the room, and Marche tells Babus to go after Mute while he deals with Llednar. It's time for another one-on-one battle, and unfortunately I was not at all prepared for this. The only objective here is to survive, as Llednar is still invincible. The bastard hits hard, and with just 2 swings of his sword, Marche is dead. This was my very first game over. So much for being so much stronger than every opponent in the game. It seems like you need to take the time to prepare for this fight, and you may actually need to have planned ahead for quite some time, as a lot of the strategies need specific abilities. Now this is a true Y-Graph situation. I remember that the strategy I would often employ in the FF Tactics Y-Graph fight is Auto Potion from the Chemist class, plus the speed increasing action ability from the Soldier class. You just had to keep increasing your speed until you were fast enough to take multiple turns in a row, all the while relying on the Auto Potion to keep you alive. For this Llednar fight, I found some good bits of advice online. Some of them, unfortunately, will take a lot of grinding for abilities. I have 0 investment in the Thief class with Marche, so I can't steal Llednar's weapon to lower his damage output. I also have 0 investment in Black Mage and White Mage, which are the prerequisites for Blue Mage. This is the human class with the reaction ability damage to MP, which converts HP damage to MP damage for as long as you have 1 MP or more. Since you regain MP every turn, it seems like it would be impossible for Llednar to kill Marche with this reaction ability. For now, I'll try some strategies that don't require any grinding. I changed Marche to the Paladin class in order to equip the Missile Robe, which will absorb the holy damage from Llednar's Save the Queen sword. I also equipped the Angel Ring, which will give me 1 revive, and the Dash Boots, which will give me a move range longer than Llednar's. And lastly, I equipped the item's action ability for healing. It's still going to be totally possible for the twerp to corner Marche and kill him with 1 hit of his Omega ability, so this isn't a foolproof strategy. Unfortunately, there's no re-equipping or saving between the 2 fights in Bervenia Palace, so I will have to go through the first battle every time I want to try a new strategy for the second battle. I do have save states though, so I could keep retrying the second battle until I get a string of bad decisions out of Llednar, and I actually did try this on my first attempt at this fight. I had no strategies in place to deal with Llednar at the time though, and so he eventually overwhelmed me no matter how many times I retried. This next attempt with the updated equipment went about as well as I could have hoped for. Llednar used a ranged ability and actually moved away from Marche on his first turn. That was all I needed. I just moved Marche as far away as possible, and the twerp could no longer get in range for any more attacks. I'm assuming the Missile Robe dissuaded him from rushing up and swinging his sword at me, but then why not just use Omega on the very first turn? I'm pretty sure that attack doesn't deal holy damage. I'm guessing he's programmed not to use Omega on the very first turn, because that would just be really frustrating for players. Judge Master Sid shows up after like 3 turns and we are saved. Woo! Glad I didn't end up having to grind. Marche asks Sid who Llednar is, and Sid calls him a distillation of an aspect of Mute, the most violent, dangerous aspect. Apparently, Llednar is just like the Totema, created to protect this new world. Sid reveals that this actually used to be his role, which explains the scene where Queen Remedy described Llednar as Sid's replacement. Sid goes off to search for Mute and the Queen, and Marche decides to seek out Ritz and Doned to convince them to return to their original world. It seems that the 4 kids present when opening the book, Marche, Mute, Ritz, and Doned, all need to want to return in order for the world to revert to its original state. Hidden Vein, the game's next story mission, has the clan investigating a supposedly depleted mine at the Tobola Cave. Marche explains to Montblanc that he's taking this mission in order to attract Doned's attention. This little interaction had me thinking about how this particular cutscene would have played out without Montblanc in the party. It is possible to lose him forever by having him die in a yacht. From what I've read, what happens is certain cutscenes change, with some just omitting Montblanc and some replacing him with a different clan member. I briefly tried searching for a compilation of these changed cutscenes but could only find one scene. If you know of any compilations like this, let me know in the comments. Now I'm wondering what would happen if you kill off every single clan member except Marche. At the Tobola Cave, the clan is ambushed by a group tipped off by Doned, just as Marche predicted. Doned appears after the fight, and he once again insists that Marche has everything while he has nothing. Marche finally lets all of his feelings out. He says he was never able to ask for anything for himself because he felt selfish doing so considering Doned's illness. He felt jealous of all the attention that Doned would get from their mother. He also reveals that he, Doned, and their mother moved away from their father. It looks like Marche is finally able to get through to his brother. I'm a jaded little motherfucker, but even I found it touching when Marche insisted that he would do everything he could to help his brother be able to walk again in the real world. Doned apparently feels the same way as he apologizes while tearfully embracing his brother. Back in town, Doned and Marche are discussing their next move when a Templar appears with a message from Sid. The Queen and Prince are in a place called the Ambervale. We're to meet up with Sid at the Deti Plains, but when we get there, we're met by a group of monsters. This is making me nostalgic for that first mission we did as part of Clan Nutsy, herb picking. Remember that? We slaughtered the indigenous population then, and we slaughter the indigenous population now. Good times. With the monsters dealt with, Sid strides in atop his chocobo and asks Marche to procure some amber from the Sienna Gorge. Apparently, we're working with Ezel now, and he's going to use the amber to make an anti-law that Sid thinks we'll need at the Ambervale. Sid and Marche depart, and we see that Ritz and Shara have been eavesdropping. Let's do a quick missions update. I'm over 52 hours into the game and have completed 233 missions. According to the strategy guide, there's only 2 story missions remaining. I seem to be on pace with the main plus extra time listed on How Long to Beat of 69.5 hours. Nice. But compared to the long play I'm using, I'm pretty slow. That footage is 54 hours long and it includes every single one of the game's 300 missions. Damn. Okay, we got a real speedster over here. Once we set foot in the Sienna Gorge, the next story mission, Over the Hill, will begin. Ritz and her clan are there waiting for us. Ritz bursts into laughter unprompted from thinking about how weird it is that they're about to fight Marche when he was always getting picked on in the real world. Yeah, she knows she's about to get her ass kicked. And that would have been the case, but the girlies here have a lot of nice equipment that I wanted to steal, and that complicated things. There's a bridge here at the top of the cliff, and the enemy summoner ended up at one end with all of my clan members on the other. So we could not get to her, and she had the Phoenix summon, which revives fallen allies with full health. So I would go around stealing everything I wanted, and then knocking out whoever had nothing left, only to watch as the summoner brought them right back to life. This went on for far too long before I finally was able to break through and take her out. What I should have done was hold all of my units back, allowing the opposition to move toward us away from that damn bridge. Oh well. We did manage to steal everything and win the fight. The Ambervale shows up on the map, and this is where the final story encounters will take place. But wait, what about the amber Sid asked us to get for Ezel? So this is actually a mission that you have to take from the pub. But for it to appear there, you have to go to Ezel's card shop in Kadawan first. Once there, pick Gossip, and Ezel will post the mission, New Antilaw. I think this mission would have been available before the previous story mission, where we fought Ritz and her clan. This takes us back to the Sienna Gorge, where we, in typical SRPG fashion, will have to take out some enemies before we can get to that amber. For our efforts, we get both the amber and the Almighty Law card, which nullifies all laws in a battle. I actually already have one of these, but I don't remember how I got it. Back in Kadawan, Ezel tells Marche that he's been tasked with mediating peace talks between the palace and the resistance. Maybe I just haven't been paying attention, but I don't think I remember there ever being any mention of a resistance. Ezel asks Marche to be his bodyguard for these peace talks, and Marche expresses concern about his fugitive status. Ezel dismisses it, saying he's a fugitive too, and they still picked him as mediator. Everybody is so nonchalant about this bounty, it's crazy. The mission Reconciliation will then be available at the pub. Remember when I ranted about missions not telling you where they take place? This was way back after the second story mission. How far we've come. Anyway, yeah, I was right, and this has become quite annoying. Like for this mission we just got from Ezel, there's no mention of where the peace talks are taking place. My first thought was Bervenia Palace, but nope, not there. So I had to press R on every map location one by one until I found the right one, which is the Coring Wood. Just as it appears that the Resistance and Palace have come to an agreement at the Coring Wood, a group of objectors shows up and it's time for Marche to earn his pay. Ezel will join you in this battle, but he doesn't really do much. After the fight, the agreement is made and anti-laws become legal. This also means that Ezel is no longer a fugitive, and it's all thanks to Marche. To show his gratitude, he gives Marche the greatest gift of all, himself. That's right, Ezel joins the clan. He has a unique class called Hermetic and he can change out of it. This means that he's stuck with whatever abilities he has now, since there is no equipment that can teach any new abilities to this new class. He does have his own unique ability, Azoth, that's able to put all enemies to sleep, but that's about it for him. I won't be using Ezel. It's finally time to head for the Ambervale to take on the final story mission, Royal Valley. Sid and Marche arrive outside of this palatial structure and find Babus unconscious on the ground. Llednar appears and assures them that Babus is just unconscious. Llednar, of course, won't allow anyone in to see Mute and the Queen. Sid uses a law card that nullifies all the laws protecting Llednar. Apparently, the Queen had put a fortune law on Llednar, making him invincible. This means that we finally get to deal some damage to the twerp. He's got some nice equipment on him, but apparently you don't get to keep anything you steal in this fight, so it's pointless to do so. Once Llednar is down, he turns to stone and crumbles on the spot. That's pretty dark for what is ostensibly a kid's game. Babus awakens and we get confirmation that the Queen and Prince are inside this structure. Marche and Sid enter with the injured Babus staying behind. Inside we find only Queen Remedy, no Mute. Remedy attempts to convince Marche one last time to stay in this world, but as usual, our boy is steadfast. Mute appears, laying unconscious in the hands of the gigantic statue behind Remedy, before once more disappearing. Remedy puts on her boss fight duds, summons what appear to be the Totema Famfrit in Adramalek, and it's time to tango. The only objective here is to defeat Remedy, so I was able to just ignore the Totema and pummel the Queen with double cast summons until she went down. Marche and Sid attempt to convince Mute to let go of his desire for this world, but there's still a bit of it left. Remedy transforms into her second boss form, a Grim, summons a couple of Mateus Totema as backup, and it's time for one last fight. Remedy has some killer abilities. Omega is the same attack that Llednar had that was killing Marche with one hit during the one-on-one. Alpha is described as the father spell of Omega and Ultima and deals incredible damage. Descent summons random Totema allies. Magi deals massive damage to all enemies. Law Shift randomly changes the battle's laws. Amber Gleam neutralizes all status enhancements. So she's pretty stacked, and it made me kinda nervous looking through her abilities before the battle. Unfortunately for her though, the dumb AI is still active here, and the only ability she actually used was Magi, which did manage to kill 2 of my units before I eventually revived them both. On her 2 other turns, she just did a normal attack for middling damage. We managed to kill both Mateus Totema, and then we just swarmed Remedy until she was dead too. Very underwhelming final battles. Mute awakens just as the Grim vanishes before he too disappears. We then see Ritz and Shara out in the desert where it starts inexplicably snowing. It looks like the world is reverting to snowy St. Ivalice. Ritz is still not quite ready to go back to her white-haired self, but Shara, who has white hair like all Viera, convinces her that her white hair is a beautiful gift and that she's a special little snowflake because of it. It looks like Ritz is ready to go home. Back at the Ambervale, Sid, Marche, and Montblanc emerge to meet up with Babus. As they discuss what has happened, a disembodied voice speaks, and Mute appears before them holding a book. It looks like Mute is ready to go home as well. Montblanc assures Marche that he'll take care of all the goodbyes. I found it kind of strange how the natives of the fantasy world were reacting to all of these happenings. From my understanding, this entire world was created by the desires of the four kids, Marche, Mute, Ritz, and Doned. So now that they no longer desire this world to exist, it should all just disappear. Montblanc, Shara, and Babus included. Mute wonders aloud about the very same thing, and Sid hypothesizes that the inhabitants of this new world could sustain it with their own desires. I guess that works. We get some final scenes with some of the characters we met along the way. Nono and Doned are in the pub, and Doned declares that he has to go home. He passes by Ezel and the pub guy, who each disappear. Okay, did that just disprove Sid's theory? In a random battlefield, all of the beings there disappear one by one. And then we're back to Saint Ivalice. Ritz is now rocking her natural white hair, and she appears to be walking with one of the kids from the tutorial snowball fight. They pass by Mute's father, Mr. Randell, who is being pursued by Biggs, a former employee of his. It seems that Biggs started his own company, and he now wants to hire Mr. Randell for a big project. We then see Doned at what I'm assuming is a hospital courtyard. He's approached by another child who asks him if he's finished Final Fantasy yet and for help in defeating Adramalek. Doned suggests Double Sword and Mind Break. Yeah, I don't think Double Sword was available during the Adramalek fight. Thanks, Doned. Finally, we're back where all of this began, at the schoolyard with Marche and Mute. The bullies are back and pelting Mute with snowballs once more. But this time, our intrepid heroes hit back, pelting the bullies with snowballs of their own. They're lucky Marche doesn't hit them with an air render. And that's it. Roll credits. We're not quite done yet though. You had to save your game before all of the events at the Ambervale, and this will become your post-game save file. Loading it will take us right back to before the final battles. There are some new missions to take on, and you actually get to recruit Ritz, Shara, Babus, and even Judge Master Sid into the clan. Recruiting Sid requires finishing all 300 missions though. I completed 257 missions in 59.5 hours. First, let's recruit Ritz, Shara, and Babus. I accepted the dispatch mission left behind for Babus, which tasks the clan with finding something that Mute forgot. I then accepted the mission Mortal Snow for Ritz. We get a cutscene at the pub right after, with Ritz asking to tag along on the mission. We're off to Lutia Pass where we encounter a bunch of vampires. A bit of an Easter egg, I guess. The 3 vampires have the same names as the bullies from the tutorial snowball fight. They're easily dispatched with the Phoenix Summon, which is a never-miss one-hit KO on the undead. After the fight, Ritz remarks that the snowball fight is over. Marche asks her about this, and she explains that the mission reminded her of the snowball fight where Mute got hit by a rock. Marche wishes he could have hit back at those bullies, and we know he's plenty capable.
Nice shot!
Ritz then offers to join the clan. Unlike Ezel, Ritz doesn't have a unique class. She's functionally just a Viera. She does have some abilities mastered, but they're all Fencer abilities, so I'm also not going to be using Ritz. I also finished Left Behind along the way, and upon reaching a town, we got a cutscene. Babus enters the pub and finds Doned there. Doned introduces himself, and I'm pretty sure this is the first in-game mention of his and Marche's last name. I had already encountered their last name in the strategy guide, but curiously it's listed as Radiuju there, while in this scene it's spelled Radigiu. I'm not sure who's correct, but the Final Fantasy wiki agrees with the strategy guide. Perhaps there was an earlier mention of their last name that I just missed or forgot about. Marche enters the pub and he reports that the item Babus is looking for is in the Ambervale. Babus asks him to come along to fetch it. We actually need to accept the mission called With Babus in order to join in this fetch quest, and somewhat anticlimactically, the reward for the mission spoils what it is that Mute left behind, a teddy bear. At the Ambervale, we get a surprise. Queen Remedy is here in her initial boss fight form. She tells Babus that Mute has long forgotten him, and I'm not sure what the whole deal with this post-game is. Mute has returned to the real world but nobody else has? Marche, Doned, and Ritz are all still here. Best not to think too hard about it all, I guess. Remedy summons a couple of monsters and it's rematch time. I don't think I checked her abilities during the initial boss phase of the final battle, but here she seems to have no abilities. So all she can do is attack normally. My guys have reaction abilities like Strike Back, which dodges normal attacks and then counterattacks. This means that Remedy is effectively powerless against us. After a very one-sided fight, Remedy disappears, with the teddy bear taking her place. Marche asks Babus to be his friend and Babus joins the clan. He has a unique class, Rune Seeker, and like Ezel, can't change out of it. It seems like his abilities are a little more useful than Ezel's, so what the heck, I might deploy him in a battle sometime. For Shara, I had to run around until the mission A Maiden's Cry appeared in the pub. Pretty sure it's linked to a specific in-game month, but I'm not sure which one. This is a dispatch mission asking to investigate a woman screaming, "Ah, bugs!" Once completed, a cutscene will trigger upon returning to any town. We learned that the screaming woman was Shara, and that an antlion larva had fallen on her in the Tobola cave. Just as Shara is about to leave, Doned stops her and asks that she join the clan to help Marche and Ritz communicate better. That's some shade from little bro there. Shara is much like Ritz, with some abilities mastered in the sniper job. Sniper is a better class than Fencer, but I already have a sniper with more abilities mastered, so I'm probably not going to be using Shara. All that's left is Sid, and this requires finishing all of the game's 300 missions. At this point, I'm at 265 missions in 62 hours of game time, and it seems like it's going to be quite the grind getting these last missions done. It feels like I've sort of hit this wall, and it began well before I even finished the main story. I was just seeing the same set of missions showing up in the pub over and over again, and most of them required mission items that I did not have and I did not know how to acquire. The rest were repeatable missions that I'd already finished, so I wasn't getting much of anything new. I set out to understand exactly how these missions were showing up, and this guide from Game FAQs goes into it in a lot of detail. As usual, it's pretty complicated, but I don't really need to understand it all perfectly. I just need this tip. Accept missions that aren't useful and then cancel them. This frees up space in the queue for new missions and did clear my backlog up enough to get the ball rolling. This is still going to be a grind though, as a lot of the dispatch missions require winning a certain number of battles or defeating a certain number of enemies. The combat has become pretty tedious at this point with such strong clan members, so it's going to be a slog. One dispatch mission called Why Am I Wet was particularly aggravating. It's a required one for a couple of others to become available and has a pretty high difficulty. If I'm understanding correctly, this basically just means that you need higher stats to have a good chance of success. When you're picking a unit to dispatch, you get a little sprite of them to indicate their chances of success for this particular mission. Jumping up and down is highest, walking normally is lower, and crouching is worst. I had to grind one of my Viera up to level 32 before she was jumping up and down for Why Am I Wet? And yes, it has to be a Viera because the mission also has a required job of Red Mage. The last piece of this frustration pie is a requirement of 15 enemies defeated in order to finish the mission. That's 3 random encounters worth of enemies. So fine, I slogged through those 3 fights. And then guess what happened? That's right, my Viera failed the mission with the jumping sprite. I understand that it's not a guarantee of success, but I never dispatch anyone with anything but a jumping sprite, and I've only ever failed maybe 2 other missions. So this was a big punch to the gut. I had to run around until the mission reappeared in the pub, and then I had to do another 3 fights. Thankfully, this time my Viera came through with the W. At 71 hours total of game time, I was finally able to complete all 300 missions. To begin recruiting Sid, you have to visit Bervenia Palace. There we see a cutscene with Sid in his office, receiving a report about an investigation into corrupt judges. No evidence could be found and resources are thin, and so Sid has to turn to the clans for help. And this is where we come in, naturally. At the pub, a new mission will be available called Cleanup Time. We're tasked with investigating some strange law changes in Kadawan. Once there, we see a judge conferring red card immunity to a cloaked figure wearing some familiar clothes. Sid walks into this shady deal and sure enough, the cloaked figure uncloaks and reveals himself to be Marche undertaking a sting operation. Before we continue, I just can't help but point out that this cloak would have been perfect for hiding Marche's identity during his fugitive days. They've got the sprite for it and everything. Anyway, the corrupt judge resists arrest and summons some goons. Sid pulls out a sword and joins us in battle. As usual, it's an easy fight. Sid doesn't really get to do much. Once it's all done, Sid presumably sends the rogue judge off to prison. This is also the first time I'm seeing a regular judge off his chocobo, and it's pretty weird. Sid thanks Marche for his help but expresses worry that there are more corrupt judges. He deems joining Clan Nazi to be the best course of action for rooting out these bad apples. Sid has a unique class, Judge Master, and cannot change out of it. He's got some pretty unique abilities. Abate skips the judge's turn to allow law violations. Judge Sword deals damage and steals JP. Bind immobilizes and disables. JP Gift transfers JP from Sid to an ally. And Yellow Clip removes a yellow card from an ally. There's actually some more missions to do in this corrupt judge's quest line, so we will get the opportunity to take Sid out for a spin. Back in town, there's a new rumor about said corrupt judges, and then a new mission, No Arms Rule. The mission takes us to the Giza Plains to investigate a report of a judge confiscating weapons. The culprit doesn't actually appear as a judge in the fight. He's just a plain old illusionist. I deployed Sid in this battle, and my plan was just to spam Abate, the ability that skips the judge's turn, to basically nullify all laws for the whole encounter. But I learned that the ability costs MP and Sid doesn't have a lot of that, so he can really only do it twice in a row. So once again, Sid doesn't get to do much as the mission is over pretty easily even without his help. Sad. The next mission is called Kissing Rule, and let me just read the entire listing for you because I don't quite understand it.
This free kissing rule is ruining my life. I have to spend all day turning down date offers now.
Rolana, the Chocobo Square. So what exactly is the free kissing rule? Is Rolana obligated to give a kiss to anyone who asks for one? Gross. Are they then asking for dates after? Gross again. Who even is Rolana? And what the heck is the Chocobo Square? I guess we need to do the mission to get answers. At the Nubs Wood, we face off against the official mandating the kissing. It seems that this guy, like the illusionist in the previous mission, isn't actually a judge. The fight was simple enough and disappointingly didn't provide any answers to my questions. After the battle, we get a cutscene with a judge, presumably one of the corrupt ones, receiving a report. Shady business is shady booming. Blank card laws and seals of immunity are mentioned but not explained. The syndicate has also started hearing word of the Judge Master's crackdown with the help of Clan Nazi, but the judge seems unperturbed. Back at the pub, there's a new rumor explaining that blank cards are to blame for new laws springing up all over the place. The next mission is also available, Immunity Pass. The quest giver is literally identified as Untrustworthy Gent, and he wants us to buy red card immunity at Cyril for 100k gil. Before the battle, we once more find the corrupt judge receiving a report. Their seals of immunity have been discovered. The judge aims to flee, but then Sid and Marche walk into the room. Ooh, busted. The judge won't go down without a fight, and we actually get to have our first battle against a judge. A judge named Mike. Mike the Judge. Mike Judge. Mike has 3 abilities. Judge Sword is the same as Sid's ability that deals damage and steals JP. Yellow card just straight up gives a yellow card to a target. Palaistra deals damage to surrounding units. There are no laws in this fight and Sid is a mandatory participant. I thought there'd be some law-changing shenanigans, but nope, nada. Mikey Mike did give a yellow card to one of my guys, but I just had Sid nullify it right after. It seems that the creator of Beavis and Butthead is not the head of the snake though, so onward we continue. The next mission is called No Full HP and has us investigating some guy trying to penalize having full HP. Apparently he's some kind of sadist using his position of power to get off. Ew. Up next is the mission No Literacy, where reading and writing have been banned. Geez, how many more of these are there gonna be? And what are they gonna ban next? School children doing violent mercenary work? Got 'em! At the Uladon Bog, we find the corrupt official who declares that paperwork sickens him, and that's why he's doing this. I didn't bring Marche along on this mission, but Montblanc says he totally agrees. Now I kinda wanna see what other characters would say. Okay, so it seems that Montblanc's response is just the Mughal response. Banga will point out that this law would also affect novels and love letters. Ezel tells him to just skip the paperwork. Such a rebel, that Ezel. Nobody else really says anything interesting. At the end of the battle, Montblanc doubles down, saying it was a good idea and that hopefully it would become a real law. Bro really hates paperwork. After the battle, we get a cutscene with the new judge receiving a report. The judge master is coming. As usual, the crook is unperturbed, saying he doesn't deal in illegal law cards and only does his job, judging engagements. Another subordinate then comes in reporting that this month's donations have come in. It seems that the clans who make donations get put onto a law benefits list. The next mission is favoritism and can be taken from Bagoba Port. A clanner had an engagement with a Bagoba official's son, and apparently the judge was playing favorites. Nepo baby alert! Sid confronts the judge we saw in the previous cutscene, but he denies any favoritism. Right on cue, Marche bursts into the room with the smoking gun, the list of clan donations. With no other recourse left, the judge summons some cronies and it's time to fight. Like the last battle with a judge, this one has no laws and Sid is a mandatory inclusion. The next mission is located in Muscadet and is called No Answers. Mel, a member of Clan Ritz, yes, Ritz's clan is named after her, certified girl boss move right there, is complaining about a no answering law. Apparently, this prohibits responding during conversation, which is just about as ridiculous as most of the other laws we've encountered throughout this quest line. Up next is no jumping, and yeah, it's about the same as the last one, and yeah, this is getting very repetitive at this point. After, we get a cutscene with Sid and his subordinates discussing the current state of the crackdown. They debate on whether the split from the palace was a good idea. Sid expresses a desire to resign once this is all over, as he feels personally responsible. They also found out from the judges already caught that there's still a mastermind on the loose. The next mission is called Decision Time, and will apparently bring us face to face with the mastermind at Sprom. Sid and Marche are in the midst of interrogating a Banga, and the Banga totally squeals, pointing to the judge here at Sprom who is in charge of the prison. This seems to be the same judge involved in the discussion with Sid based on his pretty pink armor. This judge wants to become Judge Master, and this whole scheme is his way of ousting Sid. Sid won't go quietly into the night, and it's battle time. This is another fight with judges, so no loss, and Sid participates. All three of our judge opponents are named Judge and have the same three abilities as previous judges. Is the word judge beginning to lose all meaning for you yet? Judge, 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 judge. The trio doesn't prove too much of a problem, and it's all finally over. There's a final cutscene with Sid and Marche, and honestly, it's a little bit confusing. Sid tells Marche that he would give Marche his judge sword. Marche is surprised, and then Sid kind of walks it back, saying he only said he would give it, not that he will give it. He says something about Marche being deserving if he's still as just as he is now when he's older. So I guess it's just an age thing? I don't know. And that's it. The credits roll once again, and we're done with the corrupt judge's questline. Game over, man. Game over. So what do I think about Final Fantasy Tactics Advance? I certainly enjoyed my time with the game. I think it's great, but not without flaws. I don't know how intentional it was, but I feel like it is very much a game for kids, from its story and characters to its very low difficulty level. I don't actually mind the story and characters. I think it was all well done. The difficulty is probably the worst thing about the game. I am by no means a fan of super hard games, and I do tend to prefer games to be a bit too easy than to be too difficult, but this one was still too easy even for me. Granted, I did cheat with save states to bypass the loss system. I'm sure the penalties from that would have made the game tougher, but I feel like it would have been way more annoying than actually meaningfully challenging. I don't know. I'd love to hear opinions about this in the comments. There's so much depth to this game, and people do some crazy things like grinding very early to steal every rare item possible, and some even do things like optimizing the stat increases for every single level for every single member of their clan. But what's it all for? You don't need any of that to be able to beat the game. I guess the journey is its own reward. I also want to shout out the graphics, graphic design, and art in this game. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous game, even with the limitations of the Game Boy Advance. Hell, I think it might be a better looking game than FF Tactics. I especially love the typefaces in this game. I love pixel fonts, and there are so many good ones used throughout this game. Again, I loved my time playing Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, but toward the end of it, with my clan too powerful to be challenged by anything, and with 3 sets of annoying laws, I was already very excited to move forward and play the sequel, Final Fantasy Tactics A2, Grimoire of the Rift. I hope you'll join me on that adventure. Thanks for watching.